by the Sheriff of Nottingham. And having said jurymen so duly compensated by the Sheriff of Nottingham, the jury hereby finds Robin Hood guilty of crimes against the king, and he is hereby sentenced to hang until dead, said the executioner on the platform in the town square outside of the castle. The year was 1200, a long, long time ago. Now you may wonder, who was this Robin Hood? Was he a common thief? No, a ruffian, a ne'er-do-well? No, a scoundrel. Perhaps an expert swordsman and archer. He was a politician of sorts whose main platform was the redistribution of wealth. Let me set you straight. He robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor, making him the hero of Nottinghamshire and the arch enemy of the Sheriff of Nottingham. The sheriff was the villainous law of the land appointed by the king, and he loved nothing but money and power. He used his position to cheat, to steal, to overtax, to rob everything he could from his subjects. And as his treasury swelled, the people of Nottingham grew poor. Now at the time, Nottingham was a small village consisting mostly of a few shops, a town square, some modest houses, and a castle where all of the royalty and the Sheriff of Nottingham lived. Surrounding the town and the castle was a large stone wall. The area outside the wall was known as Nottinghamshire. It consisted of a few small farms, country estates, and Sherwood Forest, home of Robin Hood and the merry men. Now, all visitors to Nottingham had to pass through Sherwood Forest, and there was a piece of advice they used to give. If you were to be stopped by Robin Hood and the merry men, you should tell the truth. Because if you told the truth, you might be allowed to keep your gold and riches, because they would ask every traveler, what are you carrying? But if you were a tax collector, a duke, an earl, or a bishop that was rich, or you lied, they would take all of your gold and they would redistribute it to the poor people of Nottingham. The gallows stood on the platform in town right next to the castle, and on the side of the castle there were 3 balconies that stood out. And I would think of them more as like luxury boxes at a football game. And as the haunting hour drew near, the luxury boxes were filled with those that Robin and his merry men had robbed. You see, Robin and his merry men had been robbing people coming through Sherwood Forest for a long, long time, but it didn't seem to matter how hard the sheriff tried. They always seemed to get away, even if Robin's men either outnumbered the sheriff's men, they outsmarted the sheriff's men, something outlandishly stupid would happen and they would just get away. Or if they did manage to catch one of the merry men, Robin would plot an adventurous, a daring rescue. But this time would be different, said the sheriff. This time would be different. This time he had caught Robin Hood himself, and this time he had brought in extra guards, king's knights, to patrol the top of the wall and the castle grounds to make sure that nothing happened. He was to be sure that Robin Hood would be hanged for sure. as those luxury boxes filled up with all of the guests that the sheriff had invited to see the glorious occasion. In the first box, of course, there was the sheriff and the Bishop of Hereford, and several dukes and earls, those who had been robbed the worst by Robin Hood. In the second box, there were knights and clergy who had grown rich under the sheriff's rule. And in the third box, more of the same, but yet a couple of behind-the-scenes supporters. One in particular, the beautiful love of Robin's life, Maid Marian. She was dressed in a royal gown with beautiful red hair. They were a secret love. No one knew. She was an advocate for the poor. And she helped Robin behind the scenes to escape once in a while, or to get more treasure, and to help the poor. Besides being execution day in Nottingham, it was also market day in Nottingham. So there was the blacksmith hut, and then there was the tinker's little hut there, and the Fletcher and the fuller, and the woodworker and the farmers had set up, and for you storytellers, even the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker were there. It was like a festive occasion. Everyone was in town to witness the execution of Robin Hood. It was like a celebration. You could smell meat cooking and the people. It was like a fair. "Bring out the prisoner," said the executioner from the platform, and they opened up the doors on the dungeons of the castle, and Robin came out looking a little beat up, but he was waving and smiling at his subjects that he thought, and they were kind of cheering him on, and he went up onto the platform and he waved at the sheriff. Obviously, Robin thought that he would be rescued. And it briefly occurred to him that at about this time the merry men should be coming over that wall or surprising him from the crowd and rescuing him, but no one came, and the executioner said, as usual, "Any last request?" And Robin said, well, to buy a little time, he thought, "Well, could you please read the charges against me?" And the executioner looked up at the sheriff, and the sheriff shook his head no, but then someone from the back yelled, "Read the charges!" And then someone else yelled, "Read the charges!" And then another, "Read the charges!" And then the whole crowd began to chant, "Read the charges! Read the charges!
Read the charges!
Read the charges!"
And the sheriff acquiesced. He unrolled the scroll down from the platform and onto the ground. "Robin Hood is hereby convicted of stealing from the tax collector of Kent, stealing from the tax collector of Pipewell, stealing from the tax collector of Northampton, stealing," and on and on and on. And it was quite an impressive list. Stealing the royal chickens, stealing a royal cow, fishing in the royal pond, stealing a bride. Which was true, but that's another story. Stealing the golden arrow at the archery contest, and then it went on, and it's embarrassing the sheriff by depantsing him in a sword fight, and hanging the sheriff upside down from a tree, and finally, by the time it was ended, the crowd was kind of in a jovial mood, and they were laughing, and Robin was smiling, but where were those men? And Maid Marian was looking concerned, furrowed brow. And the sheriff looked down and smiling. He says, "I see you're smiling, Robin. I bet you think those men of yours are going to rescue you, but I have a surprise for you. Bring out the other prisoners," he said. and the door of the dungeon opened, and 10 of Robin's best men were dragged from the dungeon. Will Scarlet, Little John, Allen a Dale, even Friar Tuck was dragged up to the platform. Maid Marian could not bear to watch. These were the men they were counting on to rescue Robin, and she could not watch. She left her balcony. The sheriff said, "We found these men plotting your rescue. I say we bring them up here and hang them." And, Robin looked at the men, and he said, "Sheriff, hang me, of course, but these men have done nothing but what I have asked them to do, and they have not been tried properly." And the sheriff smiled. He says, "No, I am the witness. I am the judge, and I am the jury. And they shall hang with you, and that shall be the end of Robin Hood and the merry men." As the executioner strung 10 more ropes over the gallows, Robin Hood looked out at the crowd, and the crowd began to look sorrowful. And Robin looked back, and he saw the blacksmith standing there, whose son he had rescued from the king's knights. And he saw the widow with her 2 older sons, the sons that had wanted to come to join the merry men, and he had said, "No, you need to stay and help your mother." And there were the women from the orphanage that the merry men had given money to, and the farmers that they had helped, and all these people in the crowd that they had helped. Virtually no one standing in the courtyard had not been affected by the merry men. And someone in the back said, "Set them free!" And the sheriff said, "Who was that? Fetch him!" And guards ran through the crowd. And then someone else said, "Set them free! Set them free!" And the sheriff had men running all through the crowd. "Set them free!" And the crowd started to chant again, "Set them free! Set them free! Set them free!" They were growing angry yet unorganized. Yes, it was a crowd of angry storytellers. Well, the sheriff started to get concerned, and he gave the signal, and the executioner was about to pull the lever when, unseen by the crowd, an archer came out of the blacksmith's hut, pulled back an arrow, a flaming arrow, and let it fly. The crowd had not seen the archer, but they could not avoid seeing that arrow flying. And it did not fly toward the executioner. And it did not fly toward the sheriff of Nottingham. But it kept flying higher and higher, and the whole crowd gasped. And then you could hear a pin drop. Where's Jane? That's a pin drop. And it was flying higher and higher, up toward the tower, toward the window of the sheriff's personal residence. Now, the arrow could have hit the side of the tower and fallen down, or it could have gone through that window and bounced off the stone wall and gone out, or even landed on the wooden floor and been easily put out. But no, it landed. It landed on a pile of straw mattresses placed just inside the window. Not the feather mattresses that the sheriff slept on, but the straw mattresses that the servants slept on. And the whole crowd held their breath. And then, poof! Flames erupted from the tower of the castle. department. No 911. The sheriff had no choice. All hands on deck. All the king's horses and all the king's men went running to the castle to put out the fire. And there stood the executioner. And the crowd started to chant. Set them free! Set them free!
Set them free!
And then they crushed in on the executioner. And then the widow pulled back her dress and pulled out a large kitchen knife. And the blacksmith pulled out a branding iron. And then someone else's sword. The whole damn crowd was brandishing weapons. And they crushed in on the executioner, who looked at them and looked at the burning castle and hopped over the back of the platform and over the wall. The widow's sons jumped up on the stage, took off the ropes. Robin hadn't seen the archer, but he knew where that arrow came from. And he knew of only one person that was not on that platform that could make that shot. And he ran to the blacksmith's hut. And there in a peasant's robe was Maid Marian. He kissed her deeply. Oh, yeah. This is Robin Hood. And when they came up from air, Little John and Will Scarlet were right behind him. The maids, servants, assistants were right there. And on the blacksmith's table were 2 strong boxes loaded with gold and treasure. And Maid Marian said, well, you know, they were so intent on killing you today and executing you that they left the treasury unguarded. We made a little withdrawal to compensate you for your trouble. And Will Scarlet, Little John, and Robin Hood loaded the treasure onto a wagon and rode out through the front gates of Nottingham. The sheriff learned an important lesson that day. It is the people who hold the power. It is the people who hold the power. It is the storytellers who hold the power. Tyranny can last for only so long. You can only oppress and torture people for so long before they will march, before they will protest, before they will riot. And riot that day they did and set a new course for the future leadership of Nottingham.